Things are gonna get crazy!
Most everyone's mad here.
Hey, yo! What's up, everyone? And welcome back to a very special AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. How have you all been doing, everyone? Did you have a good weekend? Are you enjoying your summer so far? Because I know I have. And let me tell you, I could not be any more excited for what we have in store this week. Ooh, in fact, I hear a little subscription in which someone else is also excited for this. Thank you, Gorilla's fan, for the little sub right there. But yes, what I have here is a collection of news to which we will be discussing what is possibly the biggest entertainment news of the year. Well, technically, it has already started a while back, but now things are really heating up, to which we will be diving into something in which Hollywood will be getting into a very interesting chapter, something in which they haven't been in since decades. Let me tell you, I'm ready to go and really jump right into that one, but we still got a whole bunch of other stories that we will be covering at the same time. So I'm not going to immediately start with that, but I will be getting into it eventually. So just stay tuned. And either way, no matter what story we're about to get into, I know for a fact that we are going to have a lot of fun with this one. So with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to go and ask you all, are you all prepared? Yeah! Oh, wow. Thank you, KS, for the subscription, but at least let me finish. But anyways, are you all ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? Let me hear it, folks. Oh, people are all ready. That is great to see. So, people are all prepared. People are all set. That is great to see. And now, with that said, it is now time that we shall go and get things started. All right, folks, our main story has finally arrived. And I know technically this is not the grand finale, but it deserves a proper introduction, a big introduction, especially when this is undeniably one of the biggest entertainment news of the year. Not just for movies, not just for TV shows, not even just for animation, but this is going to be a very significant moment for entertainment in 2023. And so, the moment we have been waiting for has finally arrived with the actor strike. Yes, it is time that we shall get into the biggest news of the week, which is, of course, the actor strike. Now, what happened was that on Thursday, SAG-AFTRA, the American Acting Union, has officially declared that they will be joining the Writers Guild of America to go on strike. Now, what happened was that for several weeks, SAG-AFTRA has been trying to go and discuss with the studios, which as a group, they are known as the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. You know, they have been trying to go in talks to go and have a brand new contract, to go and meet new demands, considering that we are in a new age of entertainment, especially when it comes to streaming and with the ever-evolving technology with what's been happening right now. So they have been promised to go and have better wages for better job security and all that kind of stuff. But because they have failed to go and meet those demands, they have been left with no choice but to go on strike. And we even have a couple of quotes that I would like to read here from my source on Variety. The first one here coming from the chief negotiator of SAG-AFTRA, Duncan Crabtree Ireland, in which he states, union members should withhold their labor until a fair contract can be achieved. They have left us with no alternatives. We have also gotten comments coming from the president of SAG-AFTRA, Fran Drescher, to which she states, "We are being victimized by a very greedy enterprise. At some point you have to say, no, we're not going to take this anymore. You people are crazy. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? If we don't stand tall right now, we are all going to be in jeopardy. You cannot change the business model as much as it has been changed and not expect the contract to change too. I cannot believe how the studios pled poverty, that they are losing money left and right when they give hundreds of millions to their CEOs. It is disgusting. Shame on them." So that's pretty much the position that we are in. And yes, as I am recording this, the actors' strike is still going on right now. But you might be wondering, though, at this point, what is it that SAG-AFTRA is demanding? What is it that those 160,000 actors are demanding from all these studios? What is it that they want? Well, to make a long story short, what they are asking for is a little bit similar to what, or actually it is very similar to what the Writers Guild of America are asking for. First off is better wages. As you probably know, in this economy and in this day and age, it's becoming more and more difficult to buy essential living in order to afford the essentials of just living life in general. Housing has become extremely difficult to go and actually obtain for yourself. Buying groceries has been difficult too, especially with inflation. Now, I know inflation has gotten better recently, but still, though, it can still be quite a pain. It's kind of like COVID. It's like, it's better than how it was before, but it is still technically there. And even some of the other stuff that they have to pay, like bills and electricity and heating and air conditioning and all that kind of stuff, just to go and live, to have food and shelter, like it's becoming more and more expensive. So what they are demanding is to have better livable wages for actors along with the writers. And I know some people might be thinking, well, aren't actors like being given millions of dollars to show up in movies? Well, I mean, technically that is true, but they only represent a very small fraction of all the actors that are working within the industry, including representing only a small fraction of all the actors in SAG-AFTRA. I mean, not everyone is Timothée Chalamet. Like, there are some people who are still struggling despite the fact that they are a part of the union, and there are those that they just regularly make ends meet and their salary is no different than the working class. So that is one major aspect that they are demanding, is better wages. And then there is another factor that they are demanding, which is job security. And again, just like writers, they are threatened by AI because technology has significantly advanced, and there is that fear that AI would be advanced to the point that maybe they would end up replacing actors in movies and television. And they want to ensure that that does not happen. So they want to ensure that kind of job security where actual people will take higher priority instead of AI. Now, there was at one point that Hollywood studios proposed an idea of what they can do to implement AI onto movies and TV shows and stuff like that, and that is specifically regarding extras. And apparently their idea was that they would bring in a background actor and they would pay them for a full day of their service, and they would go and scan, I believe, either their face or their entire body. And what they would do with it is that they would be able to use the AI version of that background actor forever. The actor themselves do not get any residuals. They do not have any say of how their AI version of themselves would go and be used. They don't have, they don't really get anything out of it. They only get that one pay for one day of their service, whereas the studios can use the AI version of the background actor forever, which you can imagine would definitely threaten their livelihoods. So in that regard, they want to go and ensure that security, that for all actors, big and small, that actual living humans will take priority instead of AI so that their livelihoods can be saved. And another demand that they want to go and do is that they want to go and stop studios from taking away streaming exclusive content. Now, you may have probably seen very recently in which certain studios, or specifically studios that do have streaming platforms such as Max, Disney Plus, Netflix, Paramount Plus, and more, that they would go and remove streaming exclusive content as a cost-saving maneuver, because you got companies like Warner Brothers and Disney that wants to go and find different ways to save billions of dollars. But the biggest consequence of that is that it unfortunately removes residuals for the people who were involved with those projects, that because they would remove those streaming exclusive content, there's literally nowhere else that you could go and actually find those things. Like, one great example is the one and only Ivan. Unfortunately, the one and only Ivan was one of those movies that Disney decided to go and remove from Disney Plus, despite the fact that, it was decently well received and it did get an Oscar nomination. However, because it was a Disney Plus exclusive, there's literally nowhere else that you could go and find it. Disney is not going to go and put it on syndication on television or whatever, and they're not going to go and release a physical media version of it. Like, literally the only way nowadays that you could go and watch the one and only Ivan is through piracy. And that's it. And there are some people who do depend on those residuals money in order to go and make their living. So that is a massive problem that actors are also demanding for studios to go and stop. And I'm sure there are plenty of other reasons as well, but those are the main factors as to why the actors are on strike as well. Because in the current state right now, with how studios are managing streaming services and the current state of Hollywood per se, it's becoming harder and harder for these people to go and make a living off of what they would actually do. And the livelihoods of everyone, including the big name ones, are in danger because of what's going to happen with AI, with how it seems that studios seem to have a keen interest in AI and looking at it as a cost-saving maneuver, where instead of actually paying actual people, they'll let computers to go and do the job for them. Now, in that regard, you might be wondering at this point, okay, so now that we do know what the actors want, what are going to be some of the big consequences? Now that the actors are going to be on strike, are we going to see some consequences that will happen onto Hollywood? And to that, I will say yes. Like the consequence that we have seen from the writer's strike, they have been increased tenfold because now actors have joined the writers, which, by the way, is the first time that it has occurred ever since 1960. That was legit the last time that we have seen both actors and writers actually go on strike and actually hinder the current state of Hollywood. Because back then, believe it or not, it was actually a very similar story, because back in 1960, they were seeing the rise of television. And as Hollywood was trying to adapt to this new age of entertainment, the contracts do not seem to be aging along with it. So that's why they went on strike, to make sure that their demands can actually be met. But the biggest consequence in terms of what's going to happen now that both actors and writers are on strike, the biggest thing, or actually the long story short of it all, is that do you guys remember back in 2020? Do you remember how the pandemic hit Hollywood hard and how it left some pretty bad consequences? Yeah. Hollywood will be re-experiencing that again. It's going to be somewhere like that. And the first thing that is going to happen is that a lot of productions are going to be delayed. Now, there have been some that have been pushed back, or the production was put to a halt because they didn't have writers. But now with no actors, I would say almost every production out there is now put to an immediate halt, that they cannot do anything until the actors can get back to work. And this is especially the case for productions that are going to be for 2024 and 2025. And a lot of the big ones and very notable ones, such as Deadpool 3, The Wicked movie, Venom 3, the next Mission Impossible movie, and many more, right now, their operations have been put to a grinding halt. There is no progress that they can go on because there is no progress in terms of how the actors are. The actors aren't going to come into work, so now the sets are pretty much left abandoned. And by the way, I just want to state right now, yes, animation is also included on this. Animated movies and animated shows, they need actors in order to go and progress their story because they need the actors to go and bring the projects to life, and so that the animators can actually have something to go and work with in the meantime so that they can produce their animations, to do the proper lip syncs and all that kind of stuff. So the biggest thing that we are going to see is that in the case of the 2024 and the 2025 movies, we are going to see a whole lot of delays. For the longer that we will see the actors and the writers go on strike, the more likely that we're going to see a lot of anticipated movies that are going to be heavily pushed back. I don't know by how much. Maybe we'll see some be pushed back by a few months, or maybe there will be some that will be pushed back by a year, or maybe even more than a year. That could possibly happen. But again, it depends on how long this strike is going to be. But that's just a big warning that I want to go and give out right now, is that expect a lot of delays that are going to be happening in the following weeks to come, where again, the more the strike stays, the more likely that we will see a lot of big name movies that are going to be pushed back because they don't really have any actors to work with and the productions have no choice but to be delayed. Now, another consequence that is going to happen is the fact that all the actors now can no longer attend any major events. And there's a wide list of what they are no longer allowed to go into, especially if it's for the sake to go and promote whatever new projects that they are featured in. That means you will not see any celebrities in any red carpet premieres. You won't see them in conventions. You won't see them in press tours. You won't be seeing them in award shows. And you will not be seeing them. Oh, there's another one that honestly I kind of forgot. Let's see. Let me just recollect my memory. Let's see. Premieres, press tours, conventions, award shows, and anyways, I'll recollect my memory. If I do recall, I'll go and bring it up. But you do get what I mean. Like any big events that they would. Oh, film festivals. Yes, they're not going to be attending any film festivals. So by this point, a lot of them are just going to be left abandoned. But I will say, though, that technically that doesn't necessarily mean that these big events are going to be canceled. They're just now going to be very awkward now without the celebrities. And we have already seen a big consequence of that during the weekend. Because the big thing that happened in the weekend is that at Disneyland, they were having the world premiere of the Haunted Mansion movie. Now, this was supposed to be a massive deal, especially when the film has a significant all-star cast. That they have people like Jamie Lee Curtis, Rosario Dawson, Tiffany Haddish, Danny DeVito, Owen Wilson, Lakeith Stanfield, and many more. And this was supposed to be a major event where you would see all these celebrities come together right next to the attraction that the ride is based on to go and see the movie. However, because of this strike, none of the actors ever showed up. So what did Disney do? Now, they couldn't really go and cancel it because, well, that would be a little bit too last minute. So what they decided to try out is that they would still have the red carpet event, but instead of any of the actors, they brought in the meet and greet characters. Like they would bring in Mickey and Minnie, they brought in Maleficent, they brought in the Evil Queen, they brought in Cruella de Vil. Like basically, they turned that event into one of their typical Halloween parades, that they would just bring in the characters that you would meet every day, you would get their autographs and take their pictures, and apparently those are the replacements for the celebrities of the movie. Now, granted, I will say that there are some actual people who were there. Like, I do believe the director did attend the premiere, and there were one or a few people who worked in the, who actually created the ride back in the late 1960s, that they also attended the premiere. I believe Bob Gurr was there. But other than that, though, it pretty much became a ghost town, no pun intended. But I will say, though, that at least the mansion actually did have a premiere, which is probably more than I could say about the other movies that are coming up, in which they may not even have a premiere in the first place. Like, this has already screwed up the major events for the next summer movies that are coming out in August. These include, like, Paramount with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Then you got Warner Brothers, who is also screwed with Blue Beetle. And then you also got Universal, who is screwed with Strays. All these movies with big name stars. And now they can't really have their premiere because, well, none of the actors are going to go and show up. And this is just regarding the premieres. I didn't even talk about some of the other events. Like, I know coming this week, there's going to be the San Diego Comic-Con. And I can tell you right now, all those big events, all the stuff that are supposed to be like major announcements, a lot of them have to be canned because, well, the actors are not going to be there to hype up the project that they're in. Or even like, even the fall festivals, because there are some major ones that are coming up, like in Venice and in Toronto. I can guarantee you, they are panicking right now. Like, they are freaking out about the fact that there are no actors who are going to be showing up at the premiere. Like, they're no longer going to come in to turn it into a star-studded event. So again, that's going to be really awkward. And then there's also the Emmy Awards. I think the Emmys are going to be happening in September? And it's going to be pretty weird to see a big award show without any big name actors involved, especially when people would mostly keep an eye on who's going to be winning Best Actor and Best Actress and stuff like that. So yeah, honestly, it's just going to be a pretty awkward time during all those events, especially because of how the strike is going on. But the big question remains, though, how long is this strike going to last? How long are we going to see this strike occur? And I'm just going to go and say that, honestly, I don't necessarily have an initial answer, but really, the best I could say is just when the companies give up. When the studios decided that they will go and meet the demands of the actors and the writers. Because keep in mind, it's been 2.5 months now that the writer's strike has been going on, and only recently have the actors decided to go and join in. So it's really up to it's going to be up to the studios, to which they will go and ultimately decide if they're going to go and actually meet their demands, or they're going to keep on trying to ignore it. Because if they're going to try to go and do alternatives, like if they want to replace the actors and the writers with AI and stuff like that, oh boy, they will be facing the consequences. Because yes, I know that technology has really been advanced over the years, but I don't think it's advanced enough to go and convincingly replace actors and writers to go and create quality content. Like, I can guarantee you, they are going to suffer because of this. So honestly, it is possible that maybe this will only last like a week or two, or maybe this will last for like a few months even. But either way, all these events, like really Hollywood will be suffering hard because of this, because they're going to have next to nothing in order to accumulate their revenue. Like they won't have much content to go and promote, to go and show. And from here on out, all these movies that are going to be coming out, including the ones in the fall, including like the ones in 2024 and 2025, yeah, they're going to be hit because of this. And all because studios refuse to go and meet the demands of writers and actors. And I'm just going to say right now that I stand in solidarity with both writers and with actors, that I do hope that their demands are going to be met, and that pretty soon that this thing will be over, and that the livelihoods of both writers and actors can definitely be secure. And I'm also speaking as a part-time actor as well, that I'm totally siding with the actors on this. So I wish them all the best of luck. And no matter how long it takes, that you guys must fight. And the only time that you stop is when you win. All right, so with that said and done, I would like to go and pass this on to the chat wall. And I would like to ask you all, how do you feel about the actor strike? What extra comments would you like to go and give out on this entire situation? Let me know what you think. Okay, let's see. This is definitely going to be the biggest story of 2023. Now we are seeing the WGA striking to live their lives, but also SAG at the same time. This hasn't happened in a very long time, and honestly, good. I'm glad the actors and writers are doing this together. AI has been nothing but a terrible influence to society, unfortunately. All I can say is I wish them luck. I did help out with the WGA writers weeks ago, and I'll do it again soon. All right. Let's see. I'm just gonna get right into it. SAG-AFTRA has my full support, especially in fixing the wage issue. Did you see that TikTok by Kimiko Glenn? Apparently for Orange is the New Black, she would get paid as high as 4 cents for one episode with a total of $27 for the whole show. That is next level asinine. And probably you're referring to the residuals, which, yeah, I can understand. All in all, if Hollywood is going to end this strike, they need to go beyond offering the actors bubblegum and Bennigan's coupons. If you get that reference, you get a cookie. Oh, crap. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll get a cookie because, man, I don't know what that reference is. It's like, I think I've heard of this, but I'm not sure. It's like, it's not clicking in my head. Let's see now. Let's see. The most disturbing thing about the strike is not that the actors and writers are demanding of fair deals, but it's the way how Hollywood executives are reacting, like Bob Iger calling it disturbing and not being fair, while the actors' pay are being decreased every year while the CEOs increase. And with the way they want to drag the strike until Christmas when they want them to go homeless, let's just hope they get fair deals sooner than later. What would be funny if they pull an Ocean's 8 heist? Okay, I'm just gonna say right now, I'm not gonna go and immediately comment on that. I will be talking about this, however. Just stay tuned for it. All right, let's see. So I actually met a SAG-AFTRA actress in my senior seminar art class. I am not in California, and neither is the actress. She is part of the guild, but she is not a millionaire or a rich person. She came to my class to talk about money management. So yeah, being an actor and SAG does not guarantee being well off. Honestly, these strikes are becoming more and more beautiful with people. The Animation Guild will be interesting if they're in their contract next year. I hope these strikes succeed. Exactly. And like I said, when it comes to actors, like, it's not like the only two groups are the rich and famous celebrities and like the struggling actor having a hard time to make ends meet. There are those people that are in the middle that, they would have a decent wage that can be comparable to the working class. And being an actor, like, it doesn't guarantee that you would become like massively successful. I mean, that's kind of the reason why I'm still making videos on YouTube, because when it comes to acting, like, I have yet to even make it on the levels of like, oh, I'm making good money on it, or like I'm making a decent wage. So like it's still massively hard work, it is still like something in which you are running a small business. So that's something important to go and keep in mind. Let's see what we got here. Screw billionaires. All my homies hate billionaires. Actors, writers, animators, and many more can barely make a living in the modern era. And when they finally ask for better pay, rights, and safety, people like Bob Iger dare to call their expectations unrealistic. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that getting paid 400 to 1, flying private jets and being a billionaire retreats is very realistic. I proudly stand with the protesters. If they could win their rights in the 1960s, they can win again. Oh, absolutely. Honestly, like the only outcome that I could see is just the actors and writers winning. There's no way that the Hollywood studios are going to take the W on this one. All right, I think I'm going to read one more comment before we go on to our next break. Let's see. First off, it's really too bad that strike rights are totally ensnared by corporations, especially in the States. Even in Canada, strike rights are more prominent. Correct me if I'm wrong. I fully support the actions by the SAG-AFTRA and the WGA, hoping the big studios will give in to their demands and not bleed them dry like some executives have pointed out. Like the 1927 movie Metropolis, you can't have a functioning industry without mediation. I offered you that one a few years back. All right, so now we are going to go on to our break, and I know some people have mentioned it right now, but we will be discussing about those certain comments that the executives and that studios have done. So when we come back after our break, we will go and look into the studio side of this entire strike. And welcome back. Now, for our next story, I know a lot of people are getting upset and they are commenting, and you've probably seen in the last story, some people have brought up some of the controversial comments that the studios have made in regards to the strike and how they want to go and approach this. Now, the funny thing about it is that I have already planned this out, to which I would go and actually discuss about this with you all. This was actually part of the story. In fact, originally, I was thinking that the majority of this entire podcast would be about the strike. But then again, I decided when it comes to the studio side of things, we're going to go and accumulate it all into one story. And so with that said, let us go and begin by talking about this article that you see here. Now, a few days before the actors declared that they would go on strike, Hollywood Studios decided to go and publish this article here from Deadline called Hollywood Studios WGA Strike Endgame is to let writers go broke before resuming talks in the fall. Now that sounds a little bit weird. What do they mean to make them go broke? Well, the thing is that when you look into their plan, it's actually pretty drastic, and some would say it's downright evil. Because what studios want to go and do is that what they want to try out is that they're going to go and let the writers to go and deplete their cash. That they want to go and render them so penniless to let their money to just gradually disappear to the point that they would literally be losing their homes, losing their apartments, losing their income, to the point that they would be in such a weak state where when they will resume talks, in which I believe they said in October, then studios are going to have the advantage. Yes, that is actually what they said in this article. To read from my source here on Deadline, it states, I think we're in for a long strike and they're going to let it bleed out, said one industry veteran intimate with the POV of the studio's CEOs. And then there is, at one point, where was it? Yes, it's right over here, where one insider said that the end game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses, a studio executive told Deadline, acknowledging the cold as ice approach. Several other sources reiterate the statement. One insider called it a cruel but necessary evil. So that is apparently the big plan that they wanted to do with the writers. And again, keep in mind, this was just before the actors declared that they would want to go on strike. That they know that what they are doing is absolutely cruel, but in order to make things go their way, they feel like it is a necessity to make writers be absolutely weak and make them lose everything so that they can end up with the upper hand and that their demands can end up becoming minimal so that they don't have to pay the writers as much. But that is not all, though. That's not the only thing that was actually revealed with Hollywood Studios and what they wanted to say about the strike. because then comes Bob Iger, and apparently he had a few choice of words of what he wanted to say regarding the strike. Now, reading from my source here on Variety, he stated here, "It is very disturbing to me. We've talked about disruptive forces on this business and all the challenges we're facing. The recovery from COVID, which is ongoing, is not completely back. This is the worst time in the world to add that disruption. I understand any labor organization's desire to work on behalf of its members to get the most compensation and be compensated fairly based on the values that they deliver. We manage as an industry to negotiate a very good deal with the Directors Guild that reflects the value that the directors contribute to this great business. We wanted to do the same thing with the writers, and we'd like to do the same thing with the actors. There's a level of expectation that they have. It is just not realistic. And they are adding to the set of the challenges that this business is already facing that is quite frankly, very disruptive." And of course, as you can imagine, not many people, in fact, I would say virtually no one is on the studio side. No one is on Bob's side, and no one is on the studio side. So as you could probably imagine, they have received very significant backlash on social media. Like they were attacked hard on it. And I'm not gonna lie, I even put in my comments on the situation on social media. And yeah, like honestly, like starting off over here with their plan of what they want to do with the writers, like honestly, we have entered upon cartoony levels of evil. Like this is the kind of thing that you would expect satires would go and do to present how evil the executives are. You know, like this seems like the kind of thing that you would see in The Simpsons. Like Mr. Burns would look at all the strikers and then he would say, "Smithers, I actually do have a little bit of an idea. I know what we could do in order to dispose of these strikers, or to make things go a little more adequate for our deal. We're going to let them strike, and then they will be losing their homes. And then when they come back in order to make a deal, I believe we shall have the advantage." You know, it's kind of like that. It feels like that sort of thing that we would go and see in terms of like a parody of the strike, not what's actually going on within the strike. It's absolutely over the top. Now, granted, I will say that apparently that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. That's not what studios actually want for the writers. Like, the reason why they would go and put this out is actually because of an intimidation tactic. Like, really, it's nothing more but a bluff. And they were debating if they really wanted to go and release that article, but they ultimately decided to do so anyways. And apparently, when that entire mission failed, oh man, were they pissed off at each other. And it went so badly, by the way, that they even issued a statement that they completely backtracked. And it was actually right over here, because this article did get updated, to which apparently a spokesperson for the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers stated here that these anonymous people are not speaking on behalf of the AMPTP or member companies who are committed to reaching a deal and getting our industry back to work. So it was honestly pretty bad. And not to mention that what it did was actually highlight that many of these writers don't even have homes in the first place. That even if they would be writing for very successful pictures, they would still be struggling, you know, like no matter like how acclaimed they are, no matter how many awards that they have, they're still struggling to even have a home in the first place, or even have an apartment building to begin with, especially with how expensive it is to be living in the LA area. I mean, have you seen the housing prices on there? It's astronomically ridiculous. Like, you could go in middle America, or even in my region, I could go and buy a mansion for the same price as a one-story little home in Los Angeles. It's absolutely ridiculous. So already, I mean, the writers are pretty much at the point where they're already losing their homes in the current state of their contracts. So for them, it really means nothing in the first place. And they're like, even if they would end up losing their homes, they're still going to fight in order to maintain the proper rights that they and their colleagues deserve. And then you also have the comment in regards to what Bob Iger has said, that apparently their demands are just not realistic. To which I have to go and ask, Bob, what the fridge do you mean by realistic? In fact, define realistic. Because to be quite honest, I think Bob Iger's definition of what realistic is, it's definitely a lot more different than the rest of the world's, especially with the fact that he had the gall to go and say this at the Sun Valley Conference in Idaho. And for those of you who don't know what the Sun Valley Conference is, it is also known as the summer camp for billionaires, where all these extravagant billionaires and CEOs all come together to go and meet up and discuss about how things are going in their business. And the who's who of top executives are all there. People like Mark Zuckerberg, David Zaslav, Tim Cook, Bill Gates, and many, many more. They are all found in the Sun Valley Conference, in which they all have to come in with their private jets and all with their extravagant hotels, to which they would have to go and discuss about how they can go and make more money. And yet, with that godforsaken lifestyle, and not to mention the fact, by the way, that all these Hollywood studio executives, they're at the point where they are making 8 to 9-digit figures for their annual salary, that they're literally making tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars per year. And yet somehow they get to go and dictate what is considered real and what is unreal for people who are way in the bottom of them. Now, I don't know about you, but you can look at the lifestyle of people like Bob Iger, and I can guarantee you that the grand majority of people would say that it is absolutely unrealistic. And not to mention the fact that it really does highlight that if these executives are able to go and make tens of millions or hundreds of millions annually, and even boasting about how business is going great, I was like, oh, Netflix is doing wonderful, oh, Disney is back in a better shape and better than ever, or look how many profits that Paramount is now making, and yet they say that they don't have money to go and give. Are you freaking kidding me, dude? I think you do have a few $1 million that you want to go and spare. Because the thing is, with these Hollywood executives right now, what they are acting like is dragons, but not like the awesome kind of dragons. They're acting like the hoarders, the kind in which they have to go and sit upon like a massive pile of gold, and they're not willing to go and share it to the others. That they do not want to go and expend, they don't want to spare their own salary in order to give better wages to the people that are underneath them. And overall, what all this did is that it absolutely highlights a massive disconnect between Hollywood studios and the entire rest of the world, not just with actors and with writers, but with everyone else. That clearly they don't understand how normal people seem to live. And that, again, with Bob Iger's comment, that his definition of reality is far more different than everyone else's, that he and basically every other CEO in this world are just way too privileged for their own good. They don't have an understanding of what it is to go and struggle for their craft. They don't understand about having someone on top of them to go and dictate how much they should be paid or not. And especially with the case of Bob Iger, by the way, considering that there have been some recent news that he is staying at the Walt Disney Company for 2 extra years up to 2026, and that he's giving himself another major bonus. Like, it's at the point where, like, yeah, the big problem with all this is that you got these studios that are being way too greedy, and they're not willing to go and share the profits. That they just want to keep all the money to themselves and tell all the others that, oh no, well, no, we don't have any money to spare. Well, all this money is for myself, and it's for my entire life to be labeled as a billionaire. You know, it's honestly at that point where, like, it's really becoming at a dangerous level of capitalism, where there is this massive separation between the rich and the poor, where now the entire, like, the majority of the people, the population is not going to go and stand for it, and now they're at the point where they will do whatever it takes, and they will go and destroy the empires that these billionaires have built in order to make them share their wealth. So that's the big thing about what makes it so frustrating and why these comments have significantly backfired. And I think it is safe to say that we're not going to be hearing from these executives for a long time, or at least until this entire strike is completely over, because the more they try to go and comment on the situation, the worse it is going to be on their side, and the more it's going to seem like right now they're just shown, they're viewed as the bad guys, that yes, this is a pretty black and white situation, and that those guys are clearly in the wrong. So really, this is why it really is such a massive lose-lose situation. And really, they ended up receiving such a massive L, to the point that it's an L so big that only billionaires can now go and afford. So yeah, that's what, honestly, it's comments like this why I feel like they're in a situation where they're going to be left with no choice but to go and accept the demands of writers and of actors, that they will have no choice but to sacrifice some of their own salary in order to give it to them, because the more they try to take action against the strikers, the worse it is going to be for them. And whatever action that opposes the strikers, it's only going to add more fuel to the destruction of their own empires. And I'm sure there are some companies that are in a pretty critical state where they cannot afford to go and lose whatever they have, because there are some of them that, like, they're very much crippling, like Warner Brothers, especially with the $50 billion debt that they have. I don't think they can really afford to go and lose more money as much as they already did with The Flash. So now, with that said, I think I've already spoken enough about this piece. Now I want to go and pass it on to the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, how do you feel about what they have stated here? How do you feel about the studio's comments regarding all this? I know that you've already spoken a little bit in the last story, but now this is the time that whatever you feel, just let it out. Let me know what you think. All right, let's see here. Between this story and the SAG strike, producers should be ashamed of themselves, especially for wanting the writers to go homeless, because this is inhumane. Writers and even actors work so hard, and what CEOs are doing right now is disgusting, and they deserve all the backlash for this. Exactly. Because of those comments, they really made it a black and white situation, where really it's not a matter of opinion, it's a fact that the strikers, like the writers and the actors, are the good guys, and that the CEOs and the big Hollywood studios are the villains. And that I don't think there is anyone on the internet that is pretty much rooting for the studios, unless they're just doing it for trolling purposes and just for the attention, to, just for the sake of getting attention and to enter into random arguments. Let's see. Hearing Bob Iger making that crappy take on the strikes, I would not be surprised that Bob is Lex Luthor in disguise. Although if he was Lex, he would turn Disney World into a place where he would brag about he's better than Superman. Oh my god, that would absolutely be hilarious that, Bob Iger would suddenly be like, he would take his mask off. It was me all along. It is I, Bob Chapek. I've never left the studio this whole time. Oh boy. Let's see, what other comments do we have here? I know the Bob Iger comment was really scummy, but imagine if Bob Chapek was still CEO and made comments after the battle with Johansson in 2021. We are in the Legion of Doom level of evil, where the writers and actors are fighting for their lives just to pay rent, while the CEOs are getting millions, having yachts, getting 2-year extensions, and going on retreats in ranches is a bad look. And they better give their demands or this is going to get very ugly in the stocks. Oh, absolutely. Like they will, like, especially with what's going on, like the fact that they can't necessarily produce any more extra content and the fact that all these productions might end up getting delayed. Like you can imagine the stocks are going to be going down. And really, this is just a massive example of what is wrong with capitalism, what is wrong with this entire capitalist system, and why there should be some legitimate changes. And yes, I know some people might not like this word, why some socialism should be included a little bit more. Some elements of capitalism should legitimately be replaced by elements of socialism for the better living of not just actors, but also for the working class as well. Because like this entire strike situation, it's not just in the entertainment industry, but it's all forms of labor in general. Let's see here. Hearing Bob Iger making this... Oh, no, I know. I've already read that comment. Sorry about that. Let's see what others... Did I read this one? Okay, yeah. That's flippin' disgusting that these CEOs and business people are waiting for the writers and actors to lose money for the strike to end. How on any earth did they think that this wouldn't backfire on them on a PR level? I'm honestly amazed any of these CEOs and executives haven't been kicked out or slapped. Like many of these CEOs like these writers, most of them don't have houses. Maybe these CEOs should live like these writers. Most of them don't have houses. It's not fun or easy, Iger. Oh boy, that's a big comment right there. Let's see. And here I thought cartoony evil CEOs was only in cartoons. There is no real ethical way to become a billionaire. You can only become one by taking the hard-earned money away from the hardworking employees, ruining their lives in the progress. And with these comments, we can clearly see that they can do nothing about their workers. If we are going to fight about these CEOs, the government must include a wealth tax, which would make them pay more depending on net worth. Oh boy, now that's an entire subject right there. I mean, having a wealth tax would solve so many problems. But as you can imagine, Republicans are heavily opposed to that. Like they want the easy way in order to get power. And one way to do so is to block any wealth tax as much as possible. So yeah, I mean, technically a wealth tax would absolutely be ideal because taxing people like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Jeff Bezos, Bob Iger, and David Zaslav, and many, many more would go and solve many problems. But the thing is that Hollywood is not Hollywood, but the United States and several other countries in this world are way too capitalistic to go and actually do that common sense logic right there. Let's see what else do we have here. David Zaslav, Iger, and other crappy CEOs are at their absolute worst right now. They are nothing but a bunch of rich snobs causing so much problems, not only with these strikes, but also their own companies. Warner's has lost money over Flash. Disney had a lackluster Haunted Mansion premiere, and I do hope they end up giving up losing. So once the strike was over, Zaslav in particular needs to be investigated ASAP. And I mean, yeah, and I mean, it's all these CEOs. Like, it's not just David Zaslav, it's not just Bob Iger, but also like Tom Rothman of Sony, Ted, what was it again? Ted Saravos of Netflix. You know who I'm talking about. I might have butchered his name, but yeah, all these CEOs like are very problematic, and they are part of the problem. All right, I think I'll read one more comment before we go into the grand finale and one more break. Someone mentioned Ted Saranov, is that? Yeah, it's Ted Saranov. All right, anyways, I'll read one more comment. To quote Mr. Humph for The Incredibles, "I'm not happy, Bob, not happy. The responses from CEOs in regards to the strike are not only ridiculous, but the studio's plans are very evil and scummy. I'm in full support of SAG and WGA on the matter. It's nothing but a cartoony evil plan, and Bob Iger's comment of not being realistic is an L. Again, I'm not happy, Bob, not happy." All right, so we're going to go into one more story, and when we'll be back, we are going to go and end off the talks about the strike and stuff like that. But when we do return, we will be going into lighter news. We're going to go and end this off on a happier note with one movie that has managed to do the impossible. It has yet to be considered a success, but it definitely is possibly the most admired movie of the summer. And now, folks, it is now time that we shall cap this episode off with the grand finale. And with this finale, I promised you all that eventually when this time comes, I would go and report on this. I would go and actually discuss about this story. Now, I did cover this a little bit in the last episode when we did talk about how Pixar was actually not struggling and that all those comments are nothing more but exaggerations and just like clickbait tactics to grab the attention of reactionaries to make them flip out on social media. But in this case here, I think now we can go and officially declare it. And what I'm talking about is in regards to Elemental. Yes, the Pixar movie, after a month it's been released, it has managed to go from being a disappointing failure because of its weak opening to what is possibly now the most admired movie of the summer. And I'm not necessarily talking about the movie itself, but more in regards to how it performed at the box office. Because technically, yes, how it started off on the opening, let's be honest, it sucked. Because it only started off with $29 million, which was considered one of, if not the weakest opening that a Pixar movie ever had. In fact, The Flash, which was released at the same time, earned almost double that with $55 million. But then, following afterwards, something interesting happened, where it continued to go and make money at the box office, but at a steadier pace than any of the other features, where you would see all these movies, including Spider-Verse, where they would go and dip down, like on their second weekend, they would go and immediately dip down by like 50% or at best 45%. But when it comes to Elemental, though, like the decrease is not really that much. And while it would go and make a decent amount of money, like make a few millions every day during the weekend, during the weekdays, the weekends, it would go and add in an additional $10 million or like a little bit more than that. But, it would keep on accumulating and keep on making a good amount of money. And then suddenly, it would go and be released on other international places that have yet to have Elemental, and then suddenly they would become massive hits. And a great example of that is in apparently South Korea. It is one of the biggest movies of the summer in that country. In fact, on several weeks, Elemental was at #1 at the box office over there. And even in North America, like they have actually been doing very well so far. They're on its fourth or fifth opening weekend, and on its fifth week. Yeah, it's right now on its fifth weekend, and it's still doing pretty decent for itself. Now, maybe not necessarily at the point where now it's considered a box office hit and that Disney is now making profits with Elemental, but so far, the box office a month later is actually pretty good. Where going into my source on Box Office Mojo, as I am recording this, Elemental has now so far made $125.3 million domestically, an international total of $186.4 million, and, oh, excuse me, folks, and a worldwide total of $311.7 million. And the big significance of that is that it was able to go and make more money than The Flash, the movie that it was released on the same day, where now it is at the point where everyone has pretty much accepted that The Flash is now the biggest failure of 2023. And how much it has made is $106.8 million domestically, $156.8 million internationally, and a worldwide total of $263.6 million. And on top of that, by the way, it is also worth noting that for now, Elemental has gotten the crown of the most profitable, or at least the highest grossing animated movie from Disney ever since Frozen 2 back in 2019. Because the thing with Elemental now is that with that movie, it has managed to make more money than Lightyear. It made more money than Strange World, and it has even made more money than Encanto, in which that film, I think it only made $256 million, if I remember correctly. There is my source on Collider. It actually stated, I think it got the right amount. Yeah, okay, $256.8 million worldwide. So, yeah, at that point, like, it meant, you know, I don't know if we could really say that it's a box office hit, but it definitely did something. And honestly, I think it's safe to say that a month ago, no one would ever expect that Elemental would be at this point. That honestly, like a month ago on its opening weekend, I think it was like unthinkable that it would be at the point that it would make $300 million in total, or even like thinking about would it even pass 100 million domestically. And yet it is still going. I mean, it's just inch by inch, but still though, the steadiness of how much it accumulates at the box office, it's honestly such an inspiring story in itself. How is it that it was able to go and do this? How is it that it is able to have like this much longevity, debatably even more so than any other feature that was released in the summer, more so than even Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, debatably? Now, maybe I could be wrong with that statement, but even right now, when you do look at how things are going at the box office, Elemental is still holding on strong compared to Spider-Verse. So what is it that happened? Now, number one, what really did do this, and I think this is the most significant one, is actually in regards to word of mouth. Because word of mouth really played a significant factor, like much more strongly than the marketing itself. Because I did commented last week about how it is true that technically the marketing wasn't necessarily all that great, and there could have been better directions that they could have gone with, where they could have leaned more into the commentary on immigration, more so than the typical love story between Wade and Ember. But still though, the word of mouth ended up actually becoming pretty positive, in which it did get people more curious to go and watch the feature. Now, personally, I would say that I do agree it's not necessarily Pixar's best movie. In fact, I would even say the ones that were released on Disney Plus, they were way better than Elemental. Like, I would personally take Soul, Luca, and Turning Red over Elemental any day. But even though it is not necessarily up to Pixar's top standards, that doesn't mean that it's bad. It is still a very good movie in its own right, with plenty of things in there that are worth experiencing on the big screen. And that's what got more and more people to go and be curious, and why it has a little bit of that staying power. And this is not to mention how there has yet to be any other major motion picture that has released since that has really grabbed a lot of people's attention. Even with movies like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and Mission Impossible, some people are saying that even those movies, like, regardless of how the films are, they could be like amazing or they could be meh, the amount that they're making on at the box office, they're not enough to really go and completely steal the attention of Elemental. So that's why, like, with the positive word of mouth, eventually it gradually gave the movie more and more and more attention, to the point where people were slowly going to see the movie in theaters. And especially with the fact that it is the summer, I mean, like, it's not like anybody has anything else to go and do, especially with schools that, you know, they're off for now and that people are in summer camps. You know, it could be an activity to go and check out Elemental on the big screen, which actually brings in my other point, and that is in regards to the lack of competition. And that is one major advantage that Elemental has, is that so far throughout the summer, there is no direct competition that Elemental has. There is no other family feature that could come up and try to steal Elemental's attention. Now, I know at this point, some people could argue that technically there is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, but then again, I would say that technically Spider-Verse is not necessarily in direct competition with Elemental, especially with the fact that it is aiming for a different type of audience than the Pixar movie, because with Elemental, they're going for a family audience. You know, it's mainly for kids and for families to come together and to watch the new Pixar movie on the big screen and watch all the pretty colors and all the different special effects come together with this cute little love story between a water boy and a fire girl. Whereas Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is debatably for a more older audience. It's something that is a lot more intense, a lot more action-packed, something that is a lot more true to the superhero genre. So that's why, and not to mention, something that really takes itself a lot more seriously than Elemental. So that's why I would argue that, yes, they are both animated films, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going for the same kind of audience, as Spider-Verse might be going for an older crowd than Elemental. And technically, there is also another thing that there is also another movie that some people could say, well, there is one that is technically direct competition, and that is Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. But we have already discussed about how much of a marketing disaster that was, that it feels like that Universal kind of deliberately made that thing into a failure, and Ruby Gillman was unfortunately dead on arrival, where it practically made as much as the Little Mermaid remake on its opening weekend, and now it's kind of like it practically sunk. Like, now it's at the point where pretty soon, like either this week or next week, it's going to be off of theaters, and Universal is soon going to go and put it onto direct digital. You know, it's going to be something like that. And in that regard, because of the fact that it lacks any form of competition, it doesn't give much options for audiences to go and watch whatever family movie would be out there. That if they would have a choice to go and bring their kids to the big screen, well, they'll just have to go and watch Elemental. And this is something that's going to keep on continuing, that we're going to see this momentum continue until around August, where really the only other movie that I would say is in competition with Elemental would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. And that thing is going to be coming out on August 2nd, I believe. So that still gives Elemental plenty of time to go and accumulate some cash at the box office, where now we are at the point where at the end of its run, some people are speculating there is a possibility that Elemental could end up making a grand worldwide total of either $400 million or even $500 million at the box office, which is honestly quite an admirable number, because that's even more than how much The Good Dinosaur would make, which right now there's a very good chance it could actually go and surpass that movie. And just a fresh reminder, by the way, apparently The Good Dinosaur has made a total, I believe they did mention here, The Good Dinosaur has made only $333.7 million worldwide. So I think it is a guarantee that it's going to go and past that. And there is a chance that it may even surpass the amount that A Bug's Life made with $363 million. But still, even though that some people could go and argue that that's not necessarily enough for Elemental to be considered a box office hit, or for Disney to turn a profit with Elemental, that's still a very admirable amount. And this is not to mention that, yeah, even if Disney wouldn't make their money back through Elemental alone, they're still going to go and make their returns through other means later on. I mean, keep in mind, with Elemental, Disney has actually stated that they're going to go and keep this in theaters until Labor Day. And when the fall comes, that's when they're going to go and they will start releasing it at home, where they're going to go and start releasing it digitally. They're going to go and put it up on Disney Plus, and they're going to release it on physical media. And it's going to be at that point where we are going to see a lot of sales go up. We're going to see a lot of people watching Elemental on Disney Plus. And that's where we could see that it's only then where Disney is really going to be profiting off of Elemental, and that the audience for Elemental could actually significantly grow. I would not be surprised if Elemental might even have a rebound of its popularity when it hits on Disney Plus. Maybe not necessarily on a Encanto level, but we are going to see more people who will give it a shot to go and actually watch it now that they could go and see it at home, and then the discussions about Elemental will go and resurface. But honestly, overall, this is going to pretty much comment that Elemental is the comeback movie of the summer. Like, honestly, or better yet, Elemental is the true underdog of the summer. Yes, it is true that technically this movie is not necessarily the most profitable, but the fact that it has such a massive staying power and that it proved all these naysayers wrong about the current state of Pixar or Disney or anything like that, like, it is something that honestly you could legit make a movie out of it. So overall, though, I definitely do applaud the current status of how things are going with Elemental, and especially I applaud the team at Pixar. With I applaud Peter Sohn and the entire group who worked on Elemental for the work that they have done, and that it didn't happen immediately, but now we are starting to see some progress where their work is starting to literally pay off. So honestly, it's a story that really is worth mentioning, and a story that really is worth admiring. And it brings up the lesson that you shouldn't go and immediately label a movie either as a hit or a flop based on its release, because there are so many people, especially in this day and age on the internet and social media, that they would go and just jump the gun and they would declare Elemental a flop, and that Disney lost $200 million because of Elemental's failure because it didn't have a good opening weekend. Well, with Elemental, we have now learned the lesson that just because it doesn't seem that successful now, that doesn't mean that later on it'll become a hit and massively profitable for Disney. So with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and now it's time I want to ask you all, how do you feel about the slow and gradual success that Elemental has been getting? You know, and especially if you are a fan of Elemental, or if you have seen Elemental, I would love to know your thoughts on this. All right, let's see what we got here. I always knew Elemental is going to do well later, and all thanks to the good critical reception it's been getting since its release. Best advice, never trust the opening weekend numbers. Always give it time, and you might be surprised at the end of the day. The more I watch Elemental, the more I love it. And also, Ember is now one of my favorite Pixar characters ever. Oh, that's really nice. And trust me, like even nowadays, like it took a few weeks, but now I'm starting to see on social media a whole lot of people making viral fan art of Elemental. Like now we're seeing, like now it's like slowly but surely getting into the same levels of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in terms of gathering a cult following. Like it took some time, but it did get there. Let's see now. Let's see. This is honestly very well deserved. While it is debatable if Elemental can be successful, it really has to do with the position, with the positive word of mouth, and it is quite an achievement. And Warner Brothers absolutely deserved for The Flash to be a failure, and they should have canceled it when they had the chance to and do like a tax write-off like they did with Batgirl. Oh yeah, now that is another story that I gotta say I cannot wait to see, I cannot wait to see be reported. I want to wait until we officially get the numbers of how much money did Warner Brothers lose on The Flash, because trust me, that's going to be a glorious Schadenfreude story. All right, let's see. This may be a cliche to say, but Elemental had one thing in particular that grabbed the audiences more than The Flash, and that is love. Its main selling point is to its plot, it fans and truthfully to the statement of love conquers all. Seriously, I always had hope for the film would really be successful since the beginning, and it did sell as my biggest film of the year. Everyone really had a good time. Unlike Flash, I've yet to see, but I could tell wasn't going because of the controversies of, well, everything it had. Absolutely, dude, absolutely. Let's see what other comments are there. This is fantastic and funny because a couple of days ago I saw Elemental in cinemas and it was packing. It was almost sold out at that one screening, and it's something that it's totally needed, because I can imagine how difficult and expensive it is to continuously animate characters whose elemental bodies keep moving, kind of like how Ed, Edd and Eddy moves, especially when standing still. It is a lot more deserving of this kind of viewership, and more so than most other movies around at this time. All right. I blink for 1 second and suddenly Elemental is taking a massive W. Seeing this movie finally become this big in the box office really shows how powerful positive word of mouth can really be. And I am glad to see how it went from failure to success. Also, seeing this being beating over the Flash makes me want to laugh at Warner Brothers for how they try to sweep Ezra Miller's crimes under the carpet and the controversy surrounding it, especially when it's entering a system that is about to lose money. Oh yeah, and that's another hilarious thing. The fact that right now, Warner Brothers decided that now they want to enter the Flash into the blockchain, that they want to do this entire immersive NFT experience, which honestly is absolutely hilarious, because the movie that's losing the most money this year is now entering into a system that's all about losing money. So honestly, it is very theming. I don't know if it's like good marketing. Oh, let's see, what else do we have here? As someone who's seen Elemental 5 times so far, this makes me immensely happy. This really is going to be Pixar's Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, in that it has a middling opening weekend, but legged it out into success. Once it hits Disney Plus, it's also going to be Pixar's Encanto. I think we are going to see a lot more of Ember and Wade at the parks, especially if Ember becomes if Ember becomes to Pixar's merchandise what Elsa is to Disney Animation's merchandise. I don't know if I would go that far with it, but I can imagine if Disney starts really cranking out Elemental merchandise, oh yeah, they're gonna sell. All right, I think I'm gonna go and read one more comment because even my throat is getting a bit tired now. Oh, let's see. I'm happy that Elemental beat The Flash, as that movie deserves so much better than this, so I'm glad it deserves some justice regarding the quality of the movie that it is. Congrats to beating The Flash. And I think that's really the big thing that we want to celebrate. Even if Elemental is not considered a box office hit, at least it is, at least we are happy to see the justice that at least it made more money than The Flash. And with that said, that should do it for this episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And boy, what an incredible experience that this was. I am so glad that we went through this and had a great time with all that. And I want to say before we go, don't forget to go and subscribe to the AniMat Live Twitch channel and the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel so that you don't miss a single episode. And at the same time, don't forget to go and follow me on whatever podcast service you're listening to, rather it be on Google Play, on Amazon, on Spotify, or on iTunes. And with all that said and done, I would like to go and say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, see you later, dudes.